Well, folks, we are witnessing a moment of historic significance as Israel and Hamas agree to a ceasefire in Gaza. President Joe Biden is basking in what he calls a major victory, claiming his administration's diplomacy paved the way for the agreement. Flanked by Vice President Kamala Harris and his Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Biden boasted that the terms of the deal mirrored his own proposals from back in May. Have a look.
Then, when phase 2 begins, there will be an exchange for release of the remaining living hostages, including male soldiers, and all remaining Israeli forces will be withdrawn from Gaza, and the temporary ceasefire will become permanent. And finally, phase 3, any final remains of hostages who have been killed will be returned to their families, and a major reconstruction plan for Gaza will begin. This is the ceasefire agreement I introduced last spring. Today, Hamas and Israel have agreed to that ceasefire agreement.
All right, a lot of strong talk there, but after 15 months of devastation in the Middle East, you can't help but ask this question. Was this deal about genuine leadership or a really desperate attempt to salvage President Biden's legacy? But hold on, here comes President-elect Donald Trump with a very different take. Here he is. Trump, never one to mince words, wasted no time asserting his role in this breakthrough. He boldly stated that the epic ceasefire agreement only came to fruition because of his historic victory in November. Now, according to Trump, the mere prospect of his leadership scared Hamas to the negotiating table, with his tough stance leaving no doubt that inaction would mean severe consequences. Is he wrong? Well, his track record with foreign deals is undeniable. Now, let's be clear, both men are vying for the title of peacemaker after a 15-month deadly war that threatened to spread right across the region. But the timing here is curious. Is Biden's victory lap truly well-deserved, or is this Trump's bold posturing delivering results before he's even in office? Let's bring in Veronica Dudo on this. What are your thoughts?
Really very interesting. I guess I would look at a question. What did Hamas gain by agreeing to this deal besides their prisoners that was on the table for the past 15 months? So what was it now that moved the needle if it wasn't the threat of a new administration? And really listening to President-elect Donald Trump, who said just a few weeks ago at Mar-a-Lago that there would be all hell to pay in the Middle East. And they know that he doesn't mince words, and he certainly means what he says.
Yeah, and the Pentagon very much saying that both teams, from the Trump and the Biden teams, worked together on this and that they couldn't have got the deal done if it wasn't for Trump. But have a listen to Joe Biden when he was asked this question at the White House.
Who does the history books credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you. Thanks, sir.
Kind of unedifying there, you'd have to say. What are your thoughts on his response to that question?
So that is, the Joe Biden that we have seen through the decades, when he, of course, was in Congress as a senator with, what he calls his sense of humor, looking that he is still the commander-in-chief, that he is trying to add some wins to his legacy in the final days. But what's really interesting is this is a ceasefire. It is not officially done. This conflict, this war could potentially restart again once the first phase is done. So more work needs to be done. So they only have what you look at as a pause. And so to maybe have a cocky attitude in terms of this particular instance isn't the best, because it's not over yet. And we definitely heard Benjamin Netanyahu's office hold out for a really long time, saying that the cabinet needed to still approve this, that a lot of conservative people there in Israel, that they were concerned exactly for that reason, that this is, just maybe, putting a Band-Aid over something that is a much larger issue. So regardless, the new administration that will assume power in a couple of days will still have to deal with this and, a lot of other issues, both domestically and abroad.
Biden obviously trying to look presidential there and trying to avoid that Jimmy Carter moment of waiting for Ronald Reagan to come in and to do the deal with the Iranian hostages back in the 80s. Standing there, hands on the podium, as we see in the shot there, you've got Kamala Harris and Antony Blinken on both sides, really trying to make this his presidential moment. But for Trump, he's obviously saying, well, I made the threats, I got this over the line. You talk about Hamas, but what got Israel to finally agree to this, do you think?
So that's very interesting, and I'm sure a lot of people would love to know, including historians. But I think that it's an inflection. This is a moment in time where people understand that the way the United States is going to be doing business is certainly changing. And of course, Netanyahu and Trump have enjoyed some good relations through the years during President Trump's first term, and of course, he will be back. We know that he and his wife made a visit to Mar-a-Lago a couple of months ago where, they discussed, I'm sure, this and maybe a path moving forward. But as you mentioned, Netanyahu is in a bit of a situation with his own nation because a lot of people really don't want it to be seen, that they are negotiating with this militant group and that they're really giving them credit. But at the same time, they want to bring the hostages home. So it is truly, a very complicated issue and one that is so sad and tragic for the people who are involved, for the families, everybody who is from being an elderly person down to, the 9-month-old baby that has been held captive. So, really just a tragic situation and of course, hoping for the best for those hostages.